But it kind of changed my focus. If you ask me today, I don't know what I'd put on that list, the number one on that list to manifest.
Yeah.
But I know money wouldn't be it.
Yeah.
Because I know that money's going to come and go. I mean, I've been poor. I've been without jobs. Like I told you, I was laid off. I was laid off early in my career. Yeah, I've had everything taken away from me and went back and lived in my parents' house. Was probably happier then than I've been the last 10 years. But I'm just trying to desperately make changes that are intentional, that lead me to the item that I really want. Not a false front that's sitting in front of that item that's promising me what I really want.
Right.
I don't want to go for the glitz and glamour. I want the real. I want a real life.
Yeah.
I want real love. I want a real connection with a higher power.
Yes. Hey, everyone. Let's start healing. I'm Adrienne Murchison, and welcome to episode 91 of the Let's Start Healing podcast. We have more in common than we think, and what we have in common can change the world. We're going to prove that again in this episode, where I am joined by a longtime friend, Ron Rouse, and he is going through some things spiritually. He's having some breakthroughs personally and spiritually that I think a lot of people, especially during this time, will relate to. And it's so crazy how Ron came to be on this episode. So I've known Ron for years. I met him at Cafe 290 Jazz Club, which closed after 30 years in May 2021. And I was bartending there in the early 2000s and made some really good friends. Ron was one of them. And many times when I wasn't working, I would hang out at 290. Ron and I and other friends would sit at the bar talking. And Ron and I would get into some of the craziest, deepest conversations. And I wish I could remember them because, we would be so in the moment. It would just be like, wow. And I used to say to Ron all the time, because he is a real personality, I used to say to him all the time, this was way before podcasts were ever heard of by the average person. And I used to say to him, you need your own radio show. You need your own radio show. And he never trusted me about that. And also, I was going to a lot of spiritual discussion groups, and I knew that Ron could get a lot out of the deep conversations, but he was never interested in coming along. He was never interested. And then I started holding different discussion groups here at my place, and I would invite him over. No, he wouldn't come. So cut to present day, and separate from Let's Start Healing, I have a project that I am working on where I am remembering, it's a podcast mini-series, where I am remembering Cafe 290, and I'm talking to the owner and musicians and people who work there to really just try to remember this place where celebrities would come. So much was going on at Cafe 290 in Sandy Springs over the years. So they have a lot of stories and a lot of memories. And about, 3+ weeks ago, I was about to interview. I was waiting for the owner of Cafe 290 and a well-known musician to come over and record a conversation with me about the place. And shortly before they got here, Ron texted me, and we hadn't talked in a while. Probably a few months, although we had texted back and forth. And so he texted and said he was in the area. Did I want to go to lunch? I said, I'm waiting for 2 people to come over to do a podcast. You won't believe who it is. And he said, well, can I come by and watch? And so I said, sure. So he comes by, and shortly after we start, and then when we were done recording and they left, Ron was still here. And I said, well, since you're here, I need to get a recording of you chatting about 290. It doesn't have to be long. I'm not trying to rope you into anything. I just want you to reflect a little bit. And he said, okay. That conversation turned into 2 hours. And Ron, as I said, is having some spiritual breakthroughs in his life. And he was kind enough and willing enough to share them. And it was so spontaneous, and it got to be emotional, very emotional. So that is what we have. When we finished, he said, you can do with this what you want. It can be on your Let's Start Healing podcast. It could be on the 290 podcast, whatever you want. So what I did was, part of it is going to be in the 290 series, the Cafe 290 series, and I added a little bit so you'd have a little backstory for this conversation. And it was so fruitful for both of us that he and I decided that we're going to start a separate podcast. So that's to come. We've already started recording for that. So this is just really good, really good. Ron, he works in accounting. Well, he has an accounting background. And right before the pandemic started, after working in Atlanta for most of his career, he was relocated by his company to Charlotte. So 2 months after he gets there, the pandemic shutdown happens. And so he was up there for a year, which he'll explain. And then he came back to Atlanta. And Ron, like so many others, had an awakening of what is really making me happy in this life. And he is really taking it and going into a deep dive within himself. And he shares that with us. One thing I want to mention when he's talking, and he brings this up a couple of times, when he's talking about himself, sometimes he'll say, you know how often we can tend to do that. And then he'll say, when I say you, or when I say we, I mean me. So when he's saying you, he's talking about himself. So that is it. I want to invite you to please subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. And remember, you can listen to all of our episodes on traditional podcast platforms. Wherever you're listening, wherever you like to go to listen to your podcast, you can likely find Let's Start Healing there. So subscribe, leave a comment, send me an email at letstarthealingpodcast@gmail.com. And let's get to it. Let's meet him. And let's start healing. Welcome, Ron.
Hey, Adrian. Or I should say AM. So.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right. My 290 friends.
Oh, yeah.
Would call me AM.
Yeah.
So we used to sit at the bar and get into the deepest conversations. Do you remember that?
Yes. How could I forget? So it's interesting to go somewhere that, people, I think that's another thing about 290. Different people know it for different things, so, and you could run into a huge, diverse group of people moving from one side, from the jazz side to the sports bar. And then the people you met that were behind the bar were just as much your friends as the people on the other side of the bar.
Yes.
But yeah, so maybe you head out with the intention, I'm just going to listen to music or whatever. And next thing you know, you're talking about existential items and, how the world works and how this movie commented on this or this book commented on that.
Right.
And then, we would always wind up having the conversations and then occasionally with other people chiming in to add their point of view, So.
Yeah. And remember when we used to talk about how we wanted to write a book on Cafe 290 or a movie or something?
Yeah. And
what the story would be.
Yeah. And I know that one of your big storylines was hopefully you could do something with it is, it was your love story with Mo and Mandy, and it was
Yeah.
like, well, how could you, even if it wasn't following beat by beat their actual, it wasn't going to be a documentary, but just using that as
the backdrop,
a catalyst to spark the story. Yeah, it happens in a bar and all of that. Yeah, so and it would be a very unique in a way that every place, there's other places where people have a local bar and all that, and you've seen different movies with that, you read different books with that and everything, but it kind of had its own vibe. It was our bar. It wasn't, everybody has their story that happened in their bar. And that's close. It's like what we did, but ours was special, know. So if to no one else, it was special to us. I think there's a lot of people in the world that you don't have a lot of really tight connections. Mm-hmm. And then especially like something else that we're dealing with since the pandemic, but it was worse during the pandemic. And I'll just say, my job moved me to Charlotte. So I moved from Atlanta, where I'd lived. I grew up in Sharpsburg. I lived in all around Atlanta, Stone Mountain, Smyrna, Sandy Springs, and then Midtown. But I was always in Atlanta, Right. And then now I moved from Atlanta, moved to Charlotte. So I'm staying in a new city, new job, new bosses, different coworkers, all of that, different environment. But I was also then the pandemic, so I couldn't go out and make new connections, which new connections are harder the older you get anyway. Right. But now I'm in a new city. They've locked the city down. Right. I don't know what's open on a regular day, much less what's open during a pandemic where, you have to wear a mask. You're not allowed to be close to people, all of this. They shut the office down, so I don't have any connection outside of Zoom and talking on the phone. So I'm not having those regular conversations in an office like you would. Even if it's about work, you still have conversations about what happened on the weekend. Right. And things like that. And you make connections with people that way. Mm-hmm. So I don't think I valued as much as I enjoyed it and enjoyed going there and hanging out at 290 and the friends I met at 290 and the people that were there. I think I gotta, once something is there and it's always there, or you just assume it's always going to be there. It's so easy to take it for granted. So I think I actually got to the point where once it was taken away from me when I was in Charlotte and I didn't have those connections, you didn't realize how much that recharged your battery. Mm-hmm. And just the fact that you could go in and somebody knew who you were. Right. They cared about you. You had a conversation, and it may not even be about what your troubles were. It got you away from your troubles. Or you heard somebody else's troubles. Or you heard somebody else's great news. Or, people getting married, people having kids, people moving on, people, and so you got to experience that connection with other people. Right. That, you can get that connection other places, but it's rare for me to find a true connection. Right. And I think I found so many of the true connections that I've experienced in my life have come from 290. Mm-hmm. So same here. And to your point, I remember, and I think about this sometimes, this was so many years ago. I mean, I was still working there. So I was there from 2000 to, I think, 2004. I remember I was really, really down. I was just really, really was going through a real down, depressed period. And Patty, who's, my close friend and your friend. And I remember talking to her and she said, well, let's go. It was a Friday evening. And she was saying, let's go to 290. And so I thought, okay, I don't know, if I'm going to be good company. And she said, just come on out, just come on out and, no pressure, just hang out. And very shortly after I got there, and I mean, this is an after work thing. So, I mean, it's still light outside and everything when I go. Very shortly afterwards, I just felt my spirit lift. And it wasn't temporary. Like I moved out of that depressed phase that I was feeling. Yeah. Just being around like what you're describing, just being around people who know you and like you and you can laugh and talk and have some drinks and stuff like that. So that was special. Yeah. Really special. And I mean, some people may, you get a lot of charge on your mental health just from that, just from being around people and experiencing that. It's so easy to be isolated. And I think that's one thing that I'm experiencing coming off of, like you said, it's been a year. So they offered us a way that if you had seniority and everything else, you could get a package to leave.
Yeah. And
so I was like, well, number one, I want to get back to Atlanta. I want to get back to people I know, get back to what I'm familiar with. Mm-hmm. And, so when they offered, I took it, so, and it was a way of coming back. And I think another thing that I'm dealing with now is, it's still so easy without that work relationship and going in there. And so it's easy to lose connections, and then you start
I agree.
You isolate yourself, and then you're focused on what you're doing. And so then you become the entire world. So when I become my entire world, I don't like the world I'm living in. I would rather live in other people's world. So, or at least, it gives you, if nothing else, it allows you to share your world with other people, so. And
it's easy to stay isolated.
Oh yeah, it's easy to stay isolated once you are isolated.
Yeah. I was pretty social. I liked my time to myself, but I was pretty social and outgoing, and not nearly as much now. I'm just sort of used to being away, being in my own space. Yeah. And I do want the connections like what you're describing, but then, sometimes it feels like work. And it's not that it is work. It's just what I'm making up in my mind.
Yeah, I know 100%. Like when you mention work, I look and I say that, I wouldn't hesitate to, if I got an email from someone at work about some issue that, it got to a certain point at work where the things that I was doing, it's like, I don't see the value in this. How's this going to help anything? It's minuscule what we're doing. But I would spend 60 hours a week at work, trying to get things done because I had deadlines and had to get things done. And I would do that every week. That was my life. That's where I devoted all my time and effort. If you had to work on a weekend, you worked on the weekend. If you had to work late night, you worked late night. I had no problem doing that. But like you said, why was I able to give all my time and effort to that? But then now here's something that maybe in my mind it seems like work, but it could lead to much more positive outcomes. And I'm not able to invest my time and effort in that.
Right.
And I'm trying to explain that to myself, So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. We're growing and stretching.
Trying to.
Do you call yourself retired? I call you retired.
I would say semi-retired, I guess. I'm not working currently. I may go back to work. What I would like to do is find something to do that you wouldn't call it work. I also think, and this is new, and like you said, growing and stretching and everything. And a lot with the job, I think I always said that I was a good pretend person on the job. I could pretend to be that person that found everything that we did, valuable and fascinating. But I always felt like I was putting on a face to be who that person needed to be. But I wasn't necessarily being me, but when I'd go around real friends, that's when I could be me, and I could do the things that I enjoyed doing, but then it was like, well, I spent all that time for the job and did all that and put on that face. And I did it to try and find some security, which to me at the time, security was money. Money was security.
Yeah.
To me, it was, if I get enough of that green, of that money, then all my problems are going to go away.
Right.
Or it was, well, then when it got to be where I've achieved a certain, by no means, I don't even think, I could run out of money in the future. You never know what's going to happen. But I received a certain amount where I felt comfortable of taking the money they were offering me to leave at the time. I think through, having the time off and thinking about different things, I just think I've come to realization that, I made money my God because I was relying on the money to provide me with that security.
Yeah.
Or I was relying on the job to provide me with that security.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier how, I'd got laid off. So, when I got out of school, when I got out of college, I didn't get a professional job right away. I mean, it's the same story everybody has. You're young, you're trying to get experience or whatever. But then I got a professional job, and then I got laid off. I went back to school some more. I came out of school, and then I worked at a place, and then I got laid off. So then I found another job, and then I found another job, and then that job laid me off, and then I found another job. So I'm so stupid. I knew this in the front of my brain. I knew this as a fact. I would always say that, the game you were playing at work was a you can't win game, So, I mean, but you still keep playing, and the name of the game.
Everybody does.
Yeah, but you still keep playing.
Yeah.
Because everybody else is playing the same game.
Yeah.
But if it's a you can't win game, you know how it's going to end. You can't win.
Yeah.
But just to say, but you still keep playing.
Yeah.
You think you're winning and all this, and you get good positive signs. But just to say, I had enough examples to know that the job wasn't security. They could take it away at any time.
Yeah.
I could show up on Friday or Thursday, which they did, and they could call you in a little room and they say, hey, we don't bother showing up 2 weeks from now because, we don't need you anymore. So you've invested your life into this, and then now they've just taken it away. Mm-hmm. So whatever security you thought you had, now you're back out on the torrent sea. You don't have any security anymore. So then you say, well, but I got enough money so I can just deal with the money. The money will take care of it, and that'll provide the security. But then you see there's problems that money can't take care of.
Yeah.
There's problems that come in, from so many different places, people that you love that get impacted and things you can't do. And you need another source to go to be that power and that rock. And I think that life has become so complicated the way we live it today.
Yeah.
And we're so disconnected from everybody. We've lost a lot of that connection to family and friends and everything. And we're relying on so much. A lot of times you're relying on family, but then family, they start relying on you.
Yeah.
It's a symbiotic relationship. They were there when you were young. You're there for them when they're older. Or family are gone, and you make your life about that and you rely on that. But just to say that you reach out to all these other things, but I just think you have to, place this is what I'm trying to learn now.
Yeah.
Is to place my faith in a higher power.
Yeah.
That higher power is going to provide me my security. Mm-hmm. God is going to provide my security. Mm-hmm. God's going to provide what I need in the future. He's going to provide whether I need a lot or a little, he's going to make sure that I have it. And it's my faith and belief in him that is going to be my security, because everything that we have on this planet is here today, gone tomorrow. And the one thing that you quickly come to realize once you have time to think or whatever, you quickly come to realize that you're not sufficient in yourself. Mm-hmm. As much as you rely on yourself, and you can be a very capable person, you're able to, you never had something, that you haven't been able to control or whatever. But there's some things that are just out of your control, and you can't, and then you just have to say, I'm going to trust God to do this and go through that journey of learning how to do that and investing that time, so that you can build that trust, and gain the peace that comes from that.
Right. I'm having so many revelations. I'm like, I'm going to forget them. As you're talking.
Well, I won't shut up, so you just have to interrupt.
No, but I mean, it's what you're saying is making me think so many different things. One is, like, when you were talking about money, I think that not having money can cloud judgment, can cloud our judgment. Yeah. So, like, what you're saying is so true, I'm sure, but like, I remember, as an example, because I'm thinking both of these things, I remember one time I was really upset in a relationship, and I wasn't happy in the relationship, and I wanted to get out of the relationship, but the person, he did something that really upset me. So I was focused on the thing that upset me versus the fact that I wanted to get out of the relationship, Yeah. And that's sort of is similar to me, with money. Like, if I don't have money, I'm focused on, I don't have money, I don't have enough. And that is clouding my real the totality of me and other things that, might make me happy or might work, or because I don't have this one thing.
Yep.
And so because you might have that one thing, you're able to see how that's not the be all and end all solution.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think I'm coming to realize, I was watching yesterday, Manti, the untold story of Manti.
Yeah, I saw that was out there, but I haven't watched it yet.
So it's good. And this is what I took away from it, which I had seen this. I saw the story when Catfish did the story on it in 2012, I guess.
It's Manti Te'o. He played for Notre Dame. Was that who he played for? And then it came out basically when they were going to the national championship.
Yep.
And then the story just broke that his girlfriend that he had been with throughout all of college for years, and he had never met her. And
I don't think he was even with her that long.
Yeah.
I mean,
really?
she was a fictional person, but I think it was more months.
Yeah.
But he found out that it was a hoax before that game, but the nation hadn't found out yet, but it broke shortly after that. But what I got from it was he, at the time when he was growing up and in high school and playing football and everything, he was a person deeply rooted in his religious faith and doing what he thought his faith told him to do and what his parents thought he should do. And so according to the rules, he would act according to the rules versus, what he might feel, in his heart and soul.
Yeah. And
so he really wanted to go to USC. And they go into a little bit of, how much he loved USC, but he had, I think he said about 15 offers. So, he could go where he wanted to go. Yeah. And his dad, was telling him, the difference he could make if he went to Notre Dame. So he's going to Notre Dame. And when he first got there, he didn't like it at all. It was just like a culture shock, and it was cold, and, it was just really not helpful for him. But to me, for all those things to happen, not that it couldn't happen to me or, any of us, something equivalent could happen to me. I don't know if that would happen to me.
Yeah, but something equivalent.
But I think that things happen when we don't know who we are and we're not taking actions from the right place within ourselves.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what that was all due to. And he seems to be in a really good place now. But I just think that it's a lesson. I'm not saying that to bash him. I think it's a lesson for me. It could be a lesson for everybody along the lines of what I'm saying, what I'm describing, because I'm really glad that I have been in that place where I don't really know who I am years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm just so glad that even if I'm not where I want to be, I know who I am.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's part of what I'm doing now is trying to figure out who I am. I think I've put on a face for so long that at some point you forget what's important to you, or maybe the things that seem to be so important to you, now you realize, well, that's not important at all, so what do I want to, well, I was going to say, who do I want to be? But it's not that. It's not that I'm trying to invent a new person.
Right.
I'm trying to discover who I actually am.
Yeah.
And I think that's, for some people, maybe that's very easy. But for some people, I think it's harder. It's harder than just saying that, because you're like, well, do I really believe that? Or do I believe that because this is where I've always lived? And these are all the people I know, and these are the influences that I have, So it makes you question things. So it is difficult to spend that time to really do some soul searching to figure out who you are. And, I've had so many people tell me, well, just do what makes you happy. And I was like, well, what makes me happy? That's what I need to figure out.
But I think I think the journey of that could be fun.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to do that. Yeah, I want to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it can as well. And I think it's just so easy to run back to patterns that we already have that are so, even if it's they say a rut is a grave with both ends kicked out. But
Yeah.
it's your rut.
Yeah.
You're familiar with it. You know how to do this.
Yeah.
And you can complain about it the way you always have, and then you can talk about it or whatever, and just fall back into that same routine, of what you used to do. Go back I remember like one of the times I got laid off, and I said, because at the time, I was younger then. I was in my 30s, and, I'd went to school for finance and accounting.
Yeah.
And now I was doing a job where I was working for a smaller company, but I had an office that was at, old building in Buckhead. But to me, it meant Tower Place in Buckhead. I had a view of downtown, in my office. It was all like a software company. So everything was going well when the .com, and when the .com fell off, then, I guess people were just let go. But I remember sitting there in that office and then having the job that I thought that this is where you always wanted to be. You finally, not to say that I was making tons of money. I wasn't. And I was still a young guy, and I was working for a small company. So I wasn't getting paid a whole lot. But it was like, this was the type of position that all your work has got you to, and you are miserable.
Wow.
You hate it every day, and you don't see the value in what you're doing. You don't want to do this. But I'm such an idiot that I should have learned this lesson back then, in 2002, when that position was taken away from me. I should have learned the lesson then. But instead, I took a few months off, and then it was like, oh, well, now you don't have money coming in, and you don't have enough.
Yeah.
And is there going to be enough? So I ran right back to what I knew that was comfortable. So I ran right back to that same type of position.
Yeah.
And then over time, that position, it was a more lower level, but then over time, through working at different companies, the positions got higher and higher, and now I'm in a position of more responsibility. And I was never, an executive or anything like that. I was more of a worker bee, but in my mind, I was doing what I wanted to do. I was integral to the team and everything. But it got to the same point. It was like, where now I'm sitting in an office, that's downtown, and I'm looking the opposite way. I'm looking up toward Buckhead, and I can see there, and I'm on the 5th floor. But, now it's like, so now you've just spent, all this time now getting back to the same type of location where you were in before, and you knew you didn't like it before, but now you've done this for what? You did this for this quest for security, and I can't say I learned a lot at the job. I met a lot of great people at the job. All that, it wasn't all bad. It wasn't that, but it wasn't, a job's a job. It's not meant to be a fulfillment of a life. Exactly. It's not meant to be a life. And I was using that as a substitute for life. And it was like, oh, well, now I can live, but I can also make money, which is going to give me security. And so all my problems will be taken care of. No, you've just pushed things over. You've pushed your life into this small little, cupboard. You have a whole house, and you pushed your life into the small little cupboard, and you only go over there when it starts making noise. Then you're like, what do I got to take care of over here that's messing up,
Yeah.
And then you feel anxious about it. You feel almost destroyed because now, and then also there's a certain amount of, when you are this person and you're putting on this facade and you're showing people this is who I am and I'm competent, I'm able to do this, but then you question it yourself, and then you're like, well, I know that I'm not doing these things, as far as like my life, I'm not taking care of my health the way I should. I'm not doing this. I'm sacrificing certain things for the job or whatever. But as long as I don't recognize it, then I'm fine. But you're not fine. You're just ignoring it. So the only thing you can do, which is hard to do, is go over to that little area and just start unpacking it and just say, well, what's here? What needs to be dealt with? And that's not necessarily easy to do, but I think that's what, for someone like me, that you kind of know who you are, but you really don't know who you are. And you're so used to trying to please other people, because I think that's a big desire for me. It's part of it. I'm the kind of person that's so weird. I want to be liked. I want to be part of the group, or whatever. I want to be invited to the party. I'm probably not going to show up to the party.
I can vouch for that.
I will say that I will be there. You invite me a month in advance. I'll say I'll be there.
You come most of the time.
Yeah. but I'll spend the last week trying to figure out what kind of excuse can I make up so I don't have to go, you know? So, but I'm learning that, like I said, I took Cafe 290 for granted, which was easy to do because you thought it was always be there. Mm-hmm. You take connections with people for granted because you think they'll always be there. You take connections with family for granted. Mm-hmm. And I'm just saying, you know, I think we have to build a world where we have more connections, not less connections.
Right.
And I think and I don't mean to become a philosopher, and I'm doing all the talking here.
No, but you're what you're saying is super wise.
But what all I'm saying, you know, we spend so much time having our phone or the TV or the computer or your boss or your family or whatever, having them tell you who you should be.
Yeah.
And they're preaching to you, you know, there's all kind of different pulpits out there and all kind of different preachers that are out there telling you who you should be.
Right.
And, you know, maybe it's just because I'm old and I'm getting cranky or whatever, but when I open my phone and there's somebody says, and there's an article, it's quote unquote article, and the title of the article, here's why you're wrong about X, you know, and it's like, well, how do you even know what I think about X? And why are you telling me what I should believe? So, but it makes you question stuff, but I think I talk myself in the corner, I forget what I'm talking about. But I think the main thing is that if you sit back and you don't care enough about yourself to take care of yourself, there's plenty of people out there that will use your time and energy and your focus, and you could devote your whole life to a job, your person you're in a relationship with, your family, and you think this is a connection. You think that this is giving me fulfillment. And in some cases it is. Yeah. But you're not getting fulfillment has full in the word. Mm-hmm. What you're getting is something mock of that. Or it's possible you could be. I'm not saying everybody's this way, but I'm saying it's possible that you can, because I think it's easy for me to see myself that I have to sell myself as a type of person, so then I will be accepted or whatever. But I'm not getting the full benefit of it, because what I'm trying to do is make sure I fit in all the time. So I'm trying to please everyone else, but I'm denying other people of seeing the real me and having a real conversation, because all I'm doing is saying, oh yeah, I'll repeat back to what you want. Maybe I'll give you a little bit of a slant, but I'm not going to come out. And it's not saying I'm not saying you argue with people. I'm just saying it's difficult, but if you want a full response, you have to be the full you to get a full response.
You're talking about getting to know who you are and what you want, and it can be hard, but I think that it's not as hard as people who are resistant to it think it is. Yeah. You know, yes, it's hard, but it's not like going through fire, you know, which people tend to think it is. Yeah. And there's different things. Like, so what you're describing is one example. Another example could be somebody that they know who they are. They know they're not exactly the way that they're living, but they're resistant to change. Yeah. They understand that it's hard to change. Yeah. So they can feel stuck in that way. Like, there's so many different levels. And also what I'm finding, because I've been working on myself for years and years and years, and what I'm finding is it's always something else. You know, it's always there's always another breakthrough that I'm up against. And I'm just coming through something, because before the pandemic, I was pretty good in terms of spiritually. Yeah. And then when the pandemic came and everything started changing in my life, I was like, what? You know, it was like super hard. Like, why am I going through what I'm going through? What is this about? What is this for? Yeah. And I'm only just now beginning to understand what it was about. And what it was about was me recognizing me and standing up for me and seeing my own value. Yeah. And when others might tell me that I'm not of value. Yeah. And, you know, to understand like what my gifts are, and to love me as much as God loves me. Yeah. And, you know, the people who love me. And so it's just always something, you know?
I 100% agree. And I just would, anytime I say they or whatever, what I'm really talking about is myself. Because
Right.
that's all I know is myself. So when I'm using examples, it's me in one way or the other.
Yeah.
But that's the whole thing. It's like when you say, like I can look from the outside and look at you, and I look at your beautiful home, and then I look, you have a podcast, you're doing this. You don't see that other people are struggling, as much, if not more than you, or hurting more, and that's one thing is I found, and it's difficult too, because once you start opening yourself up to start receiving things, as far as, and like I said, I'm new to all this and everything, but you see the pain in people too. Whereas before it was easy to put blinders on. I got my own pain. I'm not worried about that. I got other things I'm trying to deal with. I'm not concerned about that, or what I'm doing is more important or something. But now I don't know. I don't know if it's like your eyes have changed, or, you have new eyes, so you're seeing in different ways. But it's easy to see the pain in people. And I think that's one thing that maybe the pandemic did. I think it unrooted a lot of people from where they were. They were uprooted, and now all of a sudden whatever foundation they had was shaken. And then now it's like, and I think that's a lot of people, like when they talk about the big resignation and all these other things that are going on.
Yeah.
I think people are just like, I don't know what that life was. And now that you stopped me from doing that routine, I don't know how I'm supposed to pick it up and do it again.
Exactly.
Because it's not the same. And, you can talk about more things like, the Mandela effect, that the universe switched, or, maybe it wasn't.
What's the Mandela effect?
You don't know the Mandela effect?
No.
You know the Mandela effect.
I might know it after you tell me.
They say that, there's all these parallel universes supposedly, and they say we've switched universes. Well, the Mandela effect comes from the big one that gives it its name is there's people that remember, and I'm going to get the years all wrong here, and there's people that know it much better than I do. But there's people that remember that, like, early on, that they remember that Nelson Mandela died in prison in South Africa. That, he died, and they had a funeral. They remember watching it on TV and everything. So, and they remember that. But the thing is, in reality, Nelson Mandela didn't die in prison. He got out of prison and then became president of South Africa. So people say, but how can I have this memory it's crystal clear in my head that's what happened? And then there's other examples that are more, so that's where it gets its name, but other more examples that are more frivolous. There's a group of children's books called the Berenstain Bears or Berenstain Bears. Well, people swear that it was spelt one way, like S-T-I-N, but it was actually always spelled S-T-A-I-N or whatever, because that's the guy's name, the guy that wrote the books. It's his last name. But people swear that they saw it the other way, that the whole time they were growing up, that it used to be another way.
So bring it home for me how the Mandela effect is in relation to...
So people say that there are, and in this case, I do mean they, because I'm not sure I believe in this, but they would say that there are parallel universes, and somehow they have been swapped out of their universe into a parallel universe where, Mandela lived and became president, and where the Berenstain Bears was spelt differently, and where all these things that they remembered never happened, So they're like, this isn't my home universe. I come from somewhere else.
Oh,
so their thought is that somehow my
so
consciousness has been switched into a different universe. So,
well, I mean, what it is that people are waking up.
Yeah.
But that's funny that they say that. But I like it because I think about, I do believe that there's some things I know and some things I believe.
Yeah.
Like, I really don't know this. I think about the idea of there being a parallel universes.
Yeah.
And I believe that we're one of the lowest forms.
That there's more about
that there's higher beings,
Oh yeah. I see what you're saying there. Yeah. Well, and I don't know. I've gone up and down and sideways and everything else with all of this, and I don't know. I just have to believe at this current juncture that there is more. There has to be more,
yeah.
And then, and I think that, when you when you believe there is nothing else and then it's all you, well, then it's all you. But
I can't comprehend that
I
idea.
can't comprehend because I know I'm not sufficient enough. I know I can't make these things work. So maybe it's desperation, whatever, that makes me reach out to someone else. But there was something that said, is like, you can see it as weakness, but faith brings courage. And so that's where courage comes from, is faith. It's and it's faith in whatever you have faith in. And that, I think maybe that's, my sermon for today, since I'm on my soapbox, is that there's people that say they don't have faith. I don't believe in faith. It's just the material world. There's nothing there. But you're placing faith in everything anyway. You're placing faith in the government. You're placing faith in corporate America. You're placing faith in money or whatever. So you already have your faith out there. You already have this whole system where you believe that this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But there's no surety for that. That's not written in stone anywhere.
Right.
And it passes in a fleeting moment.
And
if you spend all your time and put all your faith there, and you're not at least open to exploring what else could be out there, and I could say it's woo-woo. I could say that it's all just, it doesn't make sense. It's made up. But I'll say this. I'll say that one thing that I like about myself, and I can say this, is I think I have almost an insatiable appetite to know things.
Right.
So, and I don't know, I won't say I know a lot of things, but I will say that when something sparks my curiosity, which a lot does, then I usually try and go out there and at least find something out about it. There's, like physics. I don't know anything about physics. I don't know anything about quantum physics, but there's this double slit experiment where they send particles through a slit. And if you don't look at it, if you don't observe it and measure it, then, it's a pattern like that light is a wave, it's a proton of wave. So if it comes out, and it behaves the same way as a wave does, and the pattern that you get would be a wave pattern. And I know this won't make sense, but you can look up YouTube and see this experiment. It's done everywhere, But so the experiment is, if you just let the particles go through, you get a wave pattern. And so then they broke it down and they said, well, we have two slits here and we want to see, well, we're sending one particle at a time because we thought they were interfering with each other. And that's why we got the interference pattern, because these waves and they were interfering. But now we're sending one particle at a time and we're still getting that same interference pattern.
Yeah.
So then they wanted to measure and see, well, which slit did it actually go through? So we fire it at these two slits. It's going to go through one or the other.
Yeah.
So let's measure where it went through. So when they measure where it went through, they get, instead of getting a wave pattern that you would expect from a wave like water waves or whatever, you get two straight lines, one line behind the one slit and another line behind the other slit, as if, all right, if it went through this slit, it's right there on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
If it went through the left-hand slit, it's on the left-hand side. So you measured it, and now you get these two lines. You take the measurement capabilities away, all of a sudden you get this wave pattern again that comes through. So in my mind, I'm sitting there and I was like, well, it doesn't make sense.
So you're saying you see wave patterns if you're not trying to take a measurement?
Yeah, exactly. But then if you try and take a measurement and they try and get precise and figure out which slit this particle went through, it produces different results. Just the fact that you're observing it produces different results. So they have a lot of, there's a lot of conversation about this.
Wow.
I'm no expert. I don't know anything about it, at all. But just to bring it up because it's fascinating to me. And it's like, but they can't explain it either. All the physicists, they can't explain why that happens and why it doesn't. And they're trying to explain that.
And to be clear, you can see the wave patterns in both instances. It's when you're trying to measure it is when...
So they'll do the experiment and they'll shoot all of these particles through, like one at a time, and then over time, it'll slowly build up the pattern about where things hit on the screen behind there,
Yeah.
And you get one pattern, which would look like a wave, so you would have ups and downs like this. So one, you would have like right here, you have a whole bunch of things landed right here, but hardly anything landed here. And that's because when it's coming through, like the waves offset each other, like an up wave on one side would offset a down wave on the other side. So, and I'm doing a bad job explaining it, I know. But then when they try and measure and say, where did it come from? You get just two lines. So you lose that up and down pattern because now you've measured and it's like this. And what that told me was, I don't know how that's happening. They don't know how that's happening. But how about all these other things that are out there that, and I don't know if this is true or not, but this is my speculation. It's like, well, when they talk about spiritual things happening or people or a miracle happening or even like ESP, which I don't know if that's true. I don't know if people have psychic abilities, but I know one thing that's curious is they say that they have these abilities and they may be telling the truth. They may not be, but they say they're having these abilities. But then when we try and measure and test them, we're not able to get that response. So what's different between when we try and measure and test the lowest levels of reality and decide whether this particle is a particle or a wave and now it's a probability function is what they would call it.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, what's different between that and this?
I feel that we're trying to get answers from things that can be seen or touched. And that's not where the power is.
Yeah.
That's not where the highest experiences are coming from. They're coming from things that are formless.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know what more to say. Like, I mean, I have more to say, but I don't know what more to add. Like, we're trying to get the answers we're trying to control things. We're trying to control the narrative. We're trying to control the information that we want to receive, where the real power is a gift. It's coming from a source that we have no control over.
Yeah.
The control that we have over it is to block it.
Yeah.
It's always going to be there, but we have control over whether we want to receive it or be open to it or not.
Yeah.
And that's what that's what's coming to me from that.
I think that is very true. And once again, all the different paths that my brain goes to or whatever, but I drink. I don't drink to excess often, but I'm dealing with, like stress and everything, but I just started reading like Alcoholics Anonymous, the big book on Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah.
And I think it's just, and in my mind, it's, what they say is, it's a God of your own choosing. It's a higher power of your own, however you define that.
Yeah.
And to me, that's like a gateway, for people that are like, well, I don't believe it. Well, no, if you were, what was one? Just,
right.
And it's like, well, if you're able to get the results that they get, where they're able to help people that were unable to help themselves. And they realize that these steps that we have in place and turning this over to someone else and it gives them this freedom and this release, and you listen to them talk, and I was like, well, why aren't we teaching this to everybody?
I know.
This allows you to actually have a connection,
I know.
Why does it have to be limited to people that sadly you hear their life stories and it took them to such a place for them to get where they'll give it up?
Yeah, let me tell you something. I love to listen to those stories.
I've been listening to them
on YouTube.
I've been listening to it the last. It's strange. I did not come here to talk about this, but no, you make me talk. But that's all I've been listening to the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Is all these stories, and it's very, to me, it's like, well, if you found the solution to having this connection, this spiritual connection, and they call it a spiritual awakening.
Well, because I think the first one is, acknowledging that you're powerless.
You're powerless, yeah.
And that it's going to take something greater than you to control this.
Yeah.
And because of the spiritual groups that I go to regarding God, there's a lot of people in there from AA.
Yeah.
And one of the people that he was on Let's Start Healing podcast, who is in recovery. At the time, he was in recovery for 15 years. He had a 7-year period in recovery, and then he relapsed, and then he started over. And something that he told me that I found so fascinating is that he said, when you're not drinking, if you're an alcoholic and, so it's become a disease, when you're not drinking, the disease is still moving with you through all those years. It's not like, okay, I'm 15 years down the road and the disease is back there in, 2005 or something like that.
Yeah.
No, it moves with you on down the road. I thought that was pretty deep.
I've listened to somebody tell a story, and they said that the way they described it was the same deal. It's like 15 years and you haven't taken a drink, but they said that's the whole thing. It doesn't go away. It's over there training. It's waiting for you. So you have to continue to progress to keep up with the next thing that the disease is going to come out with. And to me, it's like, well, I realize that. I know that that's true. And you always say, well, if I fix this one thing, then everything's going to be great. If I fix this, then everything's going to be great. We live in a fallen world. I don't know if anything's ever going to be great while we're here. At times I'm like, well, it is difficult.
Yeah.
And these aren't the hardest times. I mean, we live in a lot of good times. Right. But I think there's a lot of ways we've built this world that it's not conducive to the way humans should live. You know? And we've taken all the bells and whistles, but we've left behind so much that we discounted, and it's so difficult while we're here, but we make it so difficult on ourselves as well. And I remember a conversation I had with my mom, and I was like, this was a few weeks ago, but I was like, I think we just beat ourselves up so much, and once again, when I say we, I'm talking about me, but you beat yourself up so much and you deal with all the daily stuff. And then, 5 years from now, you look back, you don't even remember what was going on. Right. And I think there's a lot of times where, and I don't know what's going to be out there after we leave here. I consider myself a Christian. But I also know that I couldn't tell you today that I know the salvation. I know the message. I know Christ came, died on the cross for me, but I also have questions about, is every dotted I and crossed T, is every word, divine, or are these just, lessons that have come down that we all learned, and that they were so important lessons that's why they were written down, and that's why they're collected. So I'm not going to say that you have to get spiritual or your God's the same as mine. That's not the point. Mm-hmm. The point is, and I don't know what happens when you leave here, but I just think I just had this point in just talking to my mom, and I was like, I think, when you leave, it's like I think there's going to be people there that love you. God's going to be there, or your depiction of God, or your loved ones that you probably traveled through existence with and everything. And I just think it's possible, and it may not be, but I just had this thought while I was talking to her. And I just think you're going to go there and people were saying, hey, great job. You did a great job while you were there, and you did all this. But then they're going to sit there and they're going to say, but why did you make it so hard on yourself? Yeah. Why didn't you care about yourself more? There's a movie that just came to my mind. What is it? Judging Your Life or whatever. It's, what's his name? His last name is Brooks, and
Mel Brooks?
No, it's
Albert Brooks.
Albert Brooks.
Oh yeah.
Defending Your Life is the name of it. Yeah. And so he goes to a heaven, which is all about they judge your life that you lived, and that's basically they're judging his life, and in that movie, and this is spoilers, but in that movie, it all comes down to you're here to learn how to conquer your fears, is what it's about. You're here to learn. And because you can't move to the next level until you've conquered your fears. And I'm not saying you base your spirituality on a movie, but it makes a lot of sense to me. And it's basically the same thing. They were up there and they were looking at his life and examining it, while he's there, and he's supposed to be there defending it. And even him, while he's watching it, you can see how he's like, well, why didn't I ask for more money on the raise? Why didn't I demand that, no, I'm not going to do this. This is more important to me than that. And why didn't I stand up for those things? And it's so easy. And you always think, you get older and, you have different mindset than you did when you're young. But my dad always says, this is there's no dress rehearsal. This is the only way through. And it's like, it's harder to live a life that is intentional. And that's a word that I'm trying to learn and start use more often.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing this just because I have a job and somebody asked me to go there. I'm not doing this because I need money. Maybe I do need money, and everybody needs money. You need to exist. You need to take care of yourself. And I'm all for capitalism and all of that. But I also think that there's a way to do that where if this is the only life that you have, and I had something else happen to me. There's a guy that I was friends with at work, and sorry about this, but he qualified for the package that I took. And like you said, I've been out of the job for a year now, but he said, well, I don't think I'm there yet. I don't think I can leave yet. He has a lot of family obligations.
Mm-hmm.
And, we worked together. Like, I was in an office next to him for about maybe like a year-long period. And then after that, I worked in one building. Within a downtown, there's 3 different buildings that the company's in, all 3.
This is in Charlotte?
No, this is here
in Atlanta.
In Atlanta is where I knew him. So, so we worked there, and this was years ago. So, but I would see him occasionally, like in the hallway. I would email him and check in on him. He would email and check in on me. Once again, we weren't like hanging out and going to the football game, or I went over to his house, he went over to my house. No, it was just a friend from work, somebody that I felt a kinship with that thought about certain things the same way I did. And so when I was leaving work and he said, I don't think I'm there yet. I'm doing things with my family, and he's older than me. I'm 56 and I think he was in his 60s. But he said, well, I still stayed in contact with him. He said, well, call me every month in because we deal with finance and accounting. So there's a process. Every month in, you're closing the books or you're doing a forecast and all of this. So he said, well, just call me and rub it in at the end of every month, and so that way I know what I'm missing. And I said, all right, I'll do that. So since I left, I was calling him every month. So I called him like last Friday, and I got his voicemail. You never just get where it goes right to voicemail. You get somebody's voice or something. And it was strange, but then I called back later, and I never leave a message because in today's world, you either send a text, you don't leave a message. But I called him back, and still nobody answered, so I just left him voicemail. And I said, just call in to rub it in and all this. And then, so that was on a Friday, and I'd called him. And then I heard from someone else. That evening, a guy I used to work with, he called about something else. And I was talking with him, and he said, oh, did you hear that he passed? And like I said, we weren't best friends.
Right.
We weren't connected all the time.
Right.
But that, you can tell it impacted me.
Of course.
But it's the thought that here's somebody that
couldn't.
He thought he had more time. He thought he was going to be sufficient to fix his family problems. So he was trying to make more money so he could help fix his family problems.
Yeah.
He could help his daughter out, help his sons out, things like this. He was trying to do that and doing all the things that we're doing every day. But he never got a chance to do anything else. And I'm like, why do I feel that I'm going to let these fears hold me back and sit back and wait to do something? Or why am I afraid to open that closet up and figure out who I really am? Do I want to be the one that's sitting there behind a desk working for someone else, doing what I used to do, and I'm back in that same part and I hate it? And then I'm just gone the next day. I don't get a chance to show up to work the next day. The Lord's taken me. It's done. And what did I accomplish while I was here? did I address any issues, or did I just try and avoid everything? Did I run from life instead of trying to embrace life and live a life that would be worthy of showing people? And I think it's easy to, through all this that I'm talking about, it's easy to get in your own head, and you're worried about what other people are going to think, and you're worried about this, and you're worried about what's happening today. But the whole time you're sitting there worried about what's happening today, your life is flying by. Yeah. It's not creeping by. Days creep by. Years fly by.
Right.
It was just, people that, can you imagine people that were born in 2001? What are they? They're over 20 years old now, and that was something that to me in my mind happened yesterday.
Yeah,
so how is that 20 years just gone by? And how is it that you're still dealing with the same issues that you dealt with 20 years ago?
Yeah.
I know life isn't easy. Nothing is promised to be easy. I know things are difficult, but I just feel like it behooves me to face that difficulty and try and do something with it the best that I can. But this where it comes back to the one thing, just starting the work of doing this, like talking about the Alcoholics Anonymous, and then it says that one of, like you said, the step one, you admit that you're powerless. Step two, I think. Step two is,
first, let me read all of step one. Yeah. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, but it could be anything. That's anything. Why I like this. Yeah. You can substitute what you want. That our lives had become unmanageable. And then step two is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity.
Yeah. So, and I think that's what it says. So you come to believe that, there is a power out there that exists that can do this for me. And then I think step three is
made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. And what I like about that is, look, you and I have a different understanding. Like there could be somebody who has a minimal understanding of their higher power, or that there is a higher power. That's fine. It's as you understand him.
Yeah.
That's enough.
Yeah, that's enough. And you don't have to understand all of it.
No.
Just that you believe that there is this power that exists out there. You don't need to know alpha to omega what this power is.
Or be willing. Just be willing
to think that there is something. And so I was going through that and then reading through that. And then it also, when you start on an inventory where you start writing down about yourself, it says take a moral inventory.
Yeah.
I'm still not 100% sure I understand what that exercise is.
That's a dilemma. I've looked at that step.
But what I will say is that I started writing things down. I just said, well, just start writing things down. So I started writing things down, and then it says write your fears down. It says you write your fears, what you're afraid of, and I think that's through just starting writing those things down. And it's like they say in that program, they say, work the steps, and then the steps will get you there. It's not, you can't just go out to the store and buy it and then I have it. Work the steps, and the steps will get you there. So through working that step, and I was like, I don't know what this is going to get me. I don't see how this is going to get me anywhere. I know what I'm afraid of. I already prayed about it. I meditate. I do whatever. But it still keeps coming back. I don't know what's happening. So that's when I started writing down what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid there's not enough. I'm not going to be enough. My money's going to run out. I'm going to lose my parents. I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to, I won't have anywhere to be. I'm going to be alone and all that. So I start writing down all those fears. But then that's when the realization came to me that, you thought all these things now, these fears that you're dealing with, and then it just came to me. And that's why I said earlier, I said, it just came to me by doing that. And I'm not sure I would have come to a realization before. Because if you had asked me before, like manifestation, my sister is big on manifesting, and doing all of that. She listens to Abraham Hicks and all that. And I believe if you have a positive attitude, positive things happen. And
that's not all that Abraham Hicks is about, which we'll go into later.
But she's an expert on that. I'm not. I'm just saying that she has recommended her to me. But I know there's ways you can manifest. But the way I look at that manifesting, well, then I start thinking about, oh, it's all on me. I'm making this happen.
What are you saying came to you? What I'm
saying came to me was that if you would have asked me as far as like what I wanted to manifest, number one on the list was like $10 million. That was number one on my list. Because once again, going back to, there's not a problem that's going to face me that I'm not going to be able to handle. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, that money represented security. So, and if you would ask me, like last month, if you would ask me, I was writing it down because she suggested I do it. So I was writing down these things I wanted to manifest. And that was on the top, was the $10 million. I was like, well, I'm going to dream big. If I'm going to manifest something, I want to manifest something big. Mm-hmm. But I didn't even realize until I went through the steps of going through that inventory and writing down my fears that it's not the money. The money wasn't there. The money was a placeholder for security. And all these other fears that I had, that I was going to be alone, that I wasn't going to be enough, that I'm not sufficient in myself, I'm lacking, I don't have the security, I don't have this. I realized that I was putting these false gods up there, including the money that I thought could give me what I wanted, was the security. Mm-hmm. But what the exercise pointed out to me was, now do you see these are false gods? Now do you see how you worshiped at these other idols? Yeah. And I'm not saying this, I'm saying this in a biblical way, but you don't have to take this in a biblical way. In true biblical way, these are false idols. These are false idols that I've allowed to rule my life because I thought they promised me what I wanted. Yeah. And I'm in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I don't want to be the richest man in the world. I don't want all these great things. I wouldn't even buy a boat if I had the 10 million. I would have the 10 million to have the 10 million. Yeah. So then I could point at it and I could say, hey, look, see that over there? I don't have to worry about it. So it wasn't about the money. It's about what the money whispered to me and promised to me. So it took me a long time, and it's even taken me a longer time to tell the story. But going through that exercise, which that was one small exercise that I went through, but it brought to me such realization. And I'm not saying it changed my life and now everything's great right now. Right. But it changed my focus. If you ask me today, I don't know what I'd put on that list, the number one on that list to manifest. Yeah. But I know money wouldn't be it. Yeah. Because I know that money's going to come and go. I've been poor. I've been without jobs. Like I told you, I was laid off. I was laid off early in my career. You know, I've had everything taken away from me and went back and lived in my parents' house, you know. Was probably happier then than I've been the last 10 years. But I'm just trying to desperately make changes that are intentional, that lead me to the item that I really want. Not a false front that's sitting in front of that item that's promising me what I really want. Right. I don't want to go for the glitz and glamour. I want the real. I want a real life. Yeah. I want real love. I want a real connection with a higher power. Yes. Yes. And I know there's other ways. I know there's ways to get there. But when you have got to a point through your life, and for me, this is minuscule compared to, you listen to the stories, like you said, of people in AA and everything that they've gone through and the bridges that they've burned and they have to rebuild a life. You know, the things I've done, you know, but
turmoil is turmoil inside, you know? I mean, what we do to somebody else, that's an action, but inside, somebody else who's not harming somebody else doesn't mean they don't have that kind of turmoil inside. Exactly. You know? I don't want to live what's left, not working toward those things. Yeah. Through living your life, then, you know, you're naive on so many things, you know, when you're young or whatever, and then you grow up and then you become cynical and then you throw everything out the window and then you just rely on yourself. And then you forget how to trust people or forget how to trust anything. You even lose trust in the institutions that you've been relying on. And in some people, that's the church. You know, they were involved or they were spiritually involved, and then they feel they were let down by something that their higher power did or what God did, or the church did something, or they said something or whatever. And then once you stop trusting people, I'm finding out it becomes very difficult to gain trust again in people. And I don't believe that people are bad. I just think that, you know, I got to a place where I was like, well, my problems are my problems and I just need to deal with my problems. I should be able to figure out how to make this work. Right.
But then I've seen too many things happen that I'm focused on a pebble that's in my shoe. Somebody else has a real mountain that's in front of them. And the other thing that I know, it doesn't get easier. And I know there's mountains out there for me that the me today isn't strong enough to climb that mountain. It's going to take a different me to get to that mountain and survive out the other side. And if I don't care enough about me to build the me that is going to be able to stand up or rely on my higher power enough to inform my decisions and what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. If I don't allow that to happen, the me that I am today could be broken in the future, much more than I am now. Mm-hmm. And then also, a broken me doesn't do me any good, but it also doesn't do my loved ones any good. Mm-hmm. A lot of what I do are the words I put to it, and I'm sure I'm a hypocrite more than most probably. But I say a lot of what I do is because of family. You know, I do love my family, and I have a strong connection with my mother and my father, and with my sister and my nieces and nephews, and I try and get better connections with everybody. But I want to be the person that when the mountains come, when we face treacherous terrain along the journey, I don't want to be the person that's hiding in the back, waiting for somebody to run to the front to fix things. I want to be the person that is strong enough to be a rock and to point in the right direction of where we should go, to help people in my family, to do things for them that they've done for me, and to be that person for them. But the person I am now, like I said, the person I'm now would run from the mountain, you know, or try and find a way around, or try, you know, but it's coming for everybody, you know, but I just need to find a way to find that destination, to get to that place where I've rebuilt trust in the God as I understand him, that I can rely on him and trust in him and relax in his peace, so that when things get more difficult, which they will get more difficult, I have someone to rely on. I have a power that's sufficient. Because the one lesson that I've learned over time is that I am not sufficient. So, and I wish for you, whoever you are out there, that you are sufficient. But I think if you start looking at yourself and you really look at not, and I say this for young people as well, it's easy to just go through every day and you're doing what everybody else is doing because you think it's going to lead you to wherever you think you want to go. But I would just say two things. It's, you know, they make it up, and it's a trite saying, but they say, be careful what you wish for because you may get it. If you don't want to spend 30 years working to get somewhere and then you look back and you hate it, you don't want to be that person that, all right, I've been married 5 times because I never actually cared about them. Everybody else was married, so I got married. You know, you never pursued what your life was meant to be. So just try and do that as early as possible is what I would say.
When you say that you're not sufficient, are you saying that in judgment of yourself, or are you saying that you're not where you want to be in terms of, you know, your trust and your faith? I'm
saying that I'm not sufficient in my abilities. I think that God, you know, the universe, as my sister would say, I think gives talents to people. I mean, people have talents, you have strengths, you have everything else. What I'm saying is that this world is very complicated. And I think it's gotten to such a point, and was probably this way before. If you asked the people back in 1800, 1700, 1540, they would all say the same thing. Well, yeah, it's too complicated then. It's more than you can handle. And what I'm saying is, I don't think I'm deficient in a way that I was made poorly, that I can't do this, or I need to learn more things, or whatever. I think I could spend my time, I could learn more things. But what I'm saying is that I am insufficient in the fact that the world is a testing place to show everybody that you're insufficient. That the only way to rightly get through is to rely on this higher power. That higher power is more than sufficient to cover everything. But the lesson to learn is to rely on them and trust. So where I would say that I'm deficient is in the trusting and the relying on, to reaching out to others for help, and insufficient in a way that I can't control everything.
Right,
I can stay up at night all night trying to control this. And then my dad, I think I get a lot of stuff from him, but one of his favorite, if they would just do what I told them to do, then everything would be okay.
Yeah.
But you can't control everybody.
No.
I could sit there all night and worry about, what's happening with my sister, with her family, what's happening here, what's happening with my mom and dad, what's going on here, what's happening in my life, what's going to happen next week. Oh my God, if this happens, what could happen? So there's all these things out there that in me personally, I feel like I need to get my hands around this so I know what's going on. But I realize I can't. I don't know what's going on. People in Ukraine, before Russia came over there, they were worried about, well, are we going to replace the carpet in this apartment or not? I don't know if we have enough money or this or that. And then somebody comes in, they blow the whole building up underneath them.
Yeah.
I can't control that. I don't have any control over what that is. And if that problem comes and faces me, how am I going to handle that?
Right.
I can't control that. What am I doing? It's like part of me, like when I was leaving work and everything and then coming back to Atlanta, it was like, well, I want a compound is what I want. So I can have basically, and I think a lot of people, when you listen to other people talk about the pandemic, it's like, well, I want to leave the city and I want to get out of the city and I want to be somewhere where I'm more, and it's all about being self-sufficient. I'm going to go off grid and then I'm going to have this and then I'll have this and I'll have my own farm and I'll have this, which is all great. Self-sufficiency is great. Hunt your own food, fish for your food, grow your own food, do all this. That's great, but that only gets you so far. Right. There's other things that are going to happen that you don't have. So the compound to me, again, was another way to try and approach the security. I want everybody in one spot because then I can make sure that everybody's okay. And then if I have enough money, I could buy a place where I could do that and then we could control things and then everything would be great.
Right.
So, but that's just another lie that I'm telling myself because number one, I'm not in control. So once I realize that I'm not in control and I'm stopped trying to control everything, I turn it over to him, to my higher power, to God. And I say, God, I'm done. I've done, I tried. And hopefully you've taught me that that's not my job.
Right.
My job is to seek you out.
Right.
My job is to do what you tell me to do. And this is what I'm trying to work for. Paul in the New Testament said, I'm a slave to God, and, and I'm not, no one wants to be a slave, but, what you realize is I'm not in charge. And it even says in the Alcoholics Anonymous, it says that there's one point and it says, well, now you have a new employer. And then I had to realize that what they're talking about, well, now I'm used to having an employer. I'm used to being an employee. And it's like, well, now you have a new employer. There's someone else in charge. You have a new boss. So, and this is what I'm trying to learn is I have a new boss. I'm not seeing him every day. We don't go and get coffee in the morning and he doesn't break it down for me and send me emails, but he's going to communicate to me what he needs me to do, and it's not just wants me to do, it's something he needs me to do this. Cause he desires in me coming to find him to find the answer. And he desires for me to do that. So, and he wants me to reach out to other people, or he wants me, I don't even know what he wants me to do.
I think that, one thing when you were saying about the, how you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it had me thinking of something so simple about, when I leave here, you hear Shiloh, my dog Shiloh barking. And when I leave here, when I'm going down to the car, I always tell Shiloh, I'll be right back, or, I'll see you in a little bit. But I always say, God willing.
Yeah.
And we pray God is willing.
Yeah.
Because you don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what could happen. So I have to have trust in God. But I think for me, it's about a relationship with God. I believe that whatever God wants me to do, what I want is intertwined in that.
Yeah.
And so, for example, my Let's Start Healing podcast, I would say around 2016, I remember, like, I've always wanted to do something related to God.
Yeah.
I wanted to write a book in some way, but I couldn't quite get in my thoughts what type of book I wanted to write. I've wanted to do a podcast for years. And I knew a part of my purpose is to do something related to God, because I have such a passion to know God. And I love talking to people about God and this kind of conversation. So it took a while for me to say, well, I want to interview people about God and talk to them about their experiences and their journeys. And it's taken a while for me to understand that this is a part of my purpose, and that a part of my purpose is talking to people from all backgrounds, as long as it's in love, right? So that's a part of my purpose. The other part of my purpose is what I mentioned earlier that I'm coming through is, you know, having that complete love for me.
Yeah.
Now I'm not at Z. I just see how far down the road I'm getting and how I just came through a big roadblock.
Yep.
But what I also know is that whatever happens along this journey, I don't know what my complete purpose is. Like, I feel like there'll be different stages of enlightenment to a new purpose that this is helping me get to. You know, all I know is I want to do something that I'm in service of God, and it's fulfilling to me. Yeah. And I know that they're connected. Yeah. You know, it's not like, oh, I got to do this. You know, it's a part of my passion. Yeah. And I think that's true for everybody. You know, I think that our passion is a divine thing. Yeah. And it leads to open doorways to something greater and greater and greater. Yeah. Like, we just don't know. Like you were saying, $10 million, right? And I understand, like, you know, what that uncovered. But let's say you did get millions of dollars. It could be $100 million. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. We hear all the time about people talking about how their wildest dreams was smaller than what they actually received. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's in AA, you hear all the time. It's like, I never imagined this life for me, you know, and it's like a miracle. You know, it's like they wound up having a life that's so rich that they never even thought about. You know, it wasn't that they didn't plan it, but it came through their desires once they started admitting that they had desires and they wanted this, and then and like you said, all those strands weave together, you know, and your desires and what God wants you to do kind of all goes hand in hand. Yeah. But you know, that's why on your own it's so easy to think, well, this is what I want, this is what I really want. But you know, just make sure that is what you want, and that's what you want at the time that you're going to get it, right? You know, because you're going to be a different person in 20 years than you are today. So if it's going to take you 20 years to get it, shoot for something further down the road. Yeah. I don't know. But I think that's what's the important part is you don't know, like you said, it could be hundreds of millions of dollars. You know, you could wind up doing whatever, but if you don't have that connection spiritually, if you're letting that part fall behind, I think it's so easy to just, you know, you rely on yourself once again, and you're focused on yourself and what do I want? And it's so easy for you to, you know, you're allowing your fears to say, well, I think I can get that. And so maybe you shoot for that. But if you didn't stay in yourself and only rely on yourself, and to the part of like, oh, I got to figure this out, I can't go to friends or whatever. If all you're relying on is your own self-sufficiency, it's only going to get you so far. Yeah. You have to have those connections to other people that you love and everything else. Yeah. And it's having the courage to lay that stuff aside, to have trust in people, to experience yourself and experience some of the fear, because you're letting the fear keep you from doing these things that are opportunities out there for you. And God wants you to experience these things because he's got more for you that's down the road that you can't even imagine yet.
Right.
You know?
And you know, something I wanted to mention too is when you said like there's mountains out there, I thought you meant like hard times.
Yes, that's exactly it. Yeah.
And I was thinking about this. I don't remember this man's name, but I saw him on like Oprah's Super Soul Sunday like years ago. And he did something where he just decided he was going to be in surrender, period.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not even going to decide where I'm going to be in the next hour. Like, I'm just going to be in surrender and acceptance of whatever God wants to bring to me.
Yeah.
And he had some hard times, before I think he came to some awarenesses and enlightenments and all this kind of stuff. And I would think about that sometimes because I'm like, God, I don't want to go through that, know?
Yeah.
So,
well, that's the way I am as well.
Yeah. I'm like, hey, yikes. And so
it's going to get better before it's going to get worse before it gets better. I don't know if I can stand it getting worse. Yeah.
But what I have come to realize, and, for myself is that path is not my path.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely have life challenges.
Yeah.
But everybody's path is not, that doesn't have to be like your path, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And the challenges that I've had in my life have been of my own making. And there've been lessons in there because that's what, God meets us where we are.
Yeah.
If I had a higher awareness, then I might not have to go through that trial.
Yeah.
And, I would be able to understand what God is trying to show me, but I can't see what God is showing me. So I'm creating this situation that I have to come through to get to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you get what I'm saying.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's like there's a lesson out there and you're like, well, somebody's got to teach it to me and I got to take this course to learn the lesson.
Maybe.
And maybe.
If it
applies to you. It's up to you. Yeah.
It's up to me if I need to go through these troubles to get to an understanding. You know what? I had out of nowhere. Now, God literally brought this to me one night. I had an understanding a few years ago because you've always wanted security with money.
Yeah.
I've always wanted security of a relationship.
Yeah.
And when I say that, of course, I want to, not have money struggles, but I want that relationship.
The relationship is going to fix all these other things. Yeah. If I get this, it's going to fix all these other things. Yeah.
Yes. And so all of a sudden this line came to me from the book, A Course in Miracles. I'm like, why is this phrase coming to me just out of nowhere? So I went and I looked it up. I had to Google to see where it was in the book.
Yeah.
It was something like, God is always there. I'm paraphrasing because I can't think of the exact words, but it was like, he's always here, but I can block him unless I fully allow him in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And what I came to understand from the whole thing I was reading was that nobody's going to fulfill me. I love my mom more than anybody on the planet.
Yeah.
Like even my mom couldn't fulfill me.
Yeah.
Like no man, no woman, nobody, my dog who I love, who brings me a great deal of comfort.
Yeah.
Is not going to give me the ultimate fulfillment. Only God can do that because that's where all the sources are.
Yeah.
That's where all the resources are. That's where the love is, the unending, unconditional love. Like nothing is going to replace that. And so I have to get filled up in my awareness and my acceptance of that. And then when I have that relationship, I am complete.
Yeah.
And, the relationship is that much more beautiful if I'm a complete person rather than, I'm trying to depend on this person to fulfill me, which they can't do.
No. And then you're not feeling it. So then you're demanding more of them. And then they're like, I'm giving everything I can. You're leaning on something that isn't meant to be leaned on.
Right.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I came to that awareness and then I forgot it.
Yeah.
And then I only realized because I've grown a lot, like I said recently. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm remembering something that I learned before, but I forgot.
Yeah.
I can love somebody with all my heart and also feel like you don't complete me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't mean I don't get hurt by you or anything like that. You can hurt my feelings and break my heart, but you don't complete me. I had forgotten that. And so I had to learn some lessons.
Yeah.
before
to relearn.
To relearn it. Yeah.
It's just, the more because that's another thing I thought, well, when I left work, I thought all my problems were work related. And I was good for like 3 months. And then I started having some of the same questions, the same fears and everything cropping up. And I was like, you left all that behind. Why is this stuff coming up? And it's like, no, you still have you with you. You left the job behind, but you still have you with you. And now you don't have work as a distraction 10 hours a day. So now you have you with you 24/7. And it's like, well, what are you going to do now? But then what I've come to realize, or in the process of coming to realize, it's not me. When I'm me, and it's all about what I want and what I'm trying to do, and I'm going to make this happen, I'm going to do this or that or whatever. I choose things that are going to lead me down areas that aren't going to get me what I want. I'm very good at picking a false idol and say that's going to solve my problem, whether it's a relationship or whether it's the financial or whatever.
Yeah.
Or even if it's
distraction.
Just a distraction, So I'm really good about finding those things and then pour yourself into them for 6 months and then or 20 years or 56 years. And then you realize, well, that wasn't what I wanted.
Yeah.
How did I wind up with this? And I'd say, well, this wasn't what you wanted. How did you wind up here? And it's like, well, because you never defined what you wanted. Or once again, I was leaning on the money to solve the problem, but the money's like, that's not my job to solve that problem. I'm a medium of exchange. I'm not security that's going to take you through, spiritual awakening when, someone in your family gets sick or you have to care for them. Money can do certain things, but it's not going to solve that. You can get the best doctors in the world, but my niece, her daughter is the most loving person. But she has special needs, and she was that way from when she was born. Money helps her get treatment. Money helps to feed her. Money helps to provide special surgeries they needed for her feet and her legs and things like that. But money doesn't solve the problem of I'm a mother and I have a daughter that I know has a difficulty communicating with me.
Yes.
And how do we establish that relationship?
Yes.
So there's problems out there that if you're relying on some false god, that false god at some point is going to be like a Vegas blackjack dealer and is going to show up and it's going to clap its hands and then it's going to do that little wave and it's going to say, okay, well, that's my time. I'm out of here. And then you're going to be left on your own sitting out there and you're saying, but I was relying on you.
Right.
To be the rock that I was going to stand on. And now it's like, well, no, that was never a God to begin with.
Yeah.
That was something that man valued, and you put a lot of value in that because man valued that. It does have value, but it doesn't have the ultimate value.
Right.
It's not going to solve all your problems. So to do that, what I'm trying to learn is that I have to rely on that power that's outside of me, outside of this world, I have to learn to have faith in that. And that's going to be the power that's sufficient enough to solve my problems.
Yeah.
And I can rely on these other things, and I can rely on them for a long period of time.
Yeah.
They will work for a long period of time. But then when they're done and they walk away from that table, you're left there alone. Because you've been relying on something that is transitory or was never real to begin with, and now you just figured that out.
Right.
So, and I don't want to be in that place. I want to be in a place where I have a connection full of, it's easy to look at a God that's out there trying to judge me and well, you did this, so now I'm going to do this to you, or, oh, well, you got to be punished because this, that. No, God isn't. God punishes people. God, maybe he doesn't like people that are wicked. I'm not going to speak to what somebody else's God is. But all I can say is I think God is
I
full
don't believe
of love.
In it. Yeah,
well,
I believe God is only love.
And he wants love for you. He wants love for everyone.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's part of my problem as well, too, is to learn how to be loved and learn how to let people love me that want the best to happen for me. And I can say people or the universe or God.
And it's just a protection mechanism.
Yes.
I can be that way too. It's like we want to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
So, try to shut ourselves off sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I'll handle this. And then, just let me get back to, or God, just take care of this one thing. If you made this one thing go away, then I could get back to playing the game I was playing before, where I was pretending like I was happy, but I could actually do it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's going to be an interesting journey to continue this. And I'm interested to see where it's going to take me. And it is about surrendering, which I am much better at trying to take control than I am at surrendering. So it's going to be a challenge, but I'm looking forward to the change. And I think this life's too precious not to try and take that journey.
Yeah.
And I hopefully, and this comes back to something else, I was like, I admire my father a lot, and I think he's a very strong man. And I think he did a lot of things for me in my life that made a big difference in my life. I remember times where, you're older and you think, well, we're just friends, now because we're both adults now or whatever. And I was going through problems in my life, and he had a conversation with me where it wasn't a friend conversation. It was a friend conversation, but what it was he's my dad, and he loved me enough to have a conversation with me to kind of say, you're in this funk and you've put yourself there. You don't have to stay there. And what got me about that conversation, he was like, and I was like, I put so many blinders up and try and ignore things. I'm perfect at that. I've had all kind of experience with it. Even back then, I was really good at it.
Yeah.
So even back then, he's like saying, well, I want to talk to you about this or whatever. And then I'm like, well, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. And he goes, and he said, I know you don't want to talk about it, but I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to talk to you, and I'm going to say that, you are better than this. You can do better than this. And you just need to, start doing it. Just believe in yourself and start doing it. You're your only block, in all of this. And I'm saying in all this, and I don't remember the specific words, but it was the thought looking back that's not an easy conversation for him to have. He could have just walked away. He could have just sat there and let me flounder,
Well, no, it hurt him to have the conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but he was willing to do it.
Yeah.
He was strong enough to take that on and do it.
Yeah.
And I want to be strong enough that when I see to myself that I'm going down the wrong path and I need to do something else, I want to be as strong as he was and love myself as much as he loved me.
Yeah.
That he was willing to go through the discomfort, to have that conversation with me because he's my father and he loves me. And if I don't love myself enough to have those same tough conversations with myself and to try and at least, or have those conversations with God who loves me infinitely, if I'm not willing to open myself up to what he has to say to me, what am I cutting off out of my life? I mean, if my dad wouldn't have come and talk to me, I'm not saying I wouldn't eventually pull myself out of it, but who knows?
Yeah.
I may not have. And if I'm cutting off communication to a God that wants to help me, that loves me that much, and wants to communicate to me and let me know, hey, this is, and even if he's doing it in such a way that, well, I'm not going to show you where you're going to be 3 years from now. I know that's what you want to know. But what I'm going to show you, here's what I need you to do today. All right. Here's the direction I want you to start going in. Maybe it's not a full path. It's not laid out and, now it's all going to be. No, but I want you to start going down this path, and I'm going to be there with you when you're going down the path. And let's go down this path together. And I want to show you, Ronald, what I have for you that you've been stepping away from and dodging your whole life.
That's so awesome.
And I don't, I wasn't an emotional person. I didn't cry like this all the time.
Well, you're a Taurus, so.
But so I can't get away from it. And once it started, then I don't know Taurus. Where it came from. Yeah, a fellow Taurus.
I believe you have a book in you when you get further down, your journey. I feel like you're going to see you have a book in you.
I don't know. I think I always thought I don't know. I don't know what I am. I don't know where I am. I know where I am. I know who I am. I keep saying things like that, but I just know that I want to be a different person. I don't, and you used to I have dreams before, especially if you sit around and you have a couple of crowns in you, and then you have, well, I'm going to take over the world, or I can do this, or I can, if somebody else can do it, I can do it, or whatever. And it's like you want to do that, like, in as much as I'd say, well, I don't care what other people think about me or anything like that. Everything I do is I'm trying to avoid being judged by other people that I don't care anything about.
Yeah.
Number one, it's wrong that I don't care anything about these people, because I should care about people instead of just caring about myself. But the thing that is also wrong is caring what they think about you when they're not even thinking about you.
Exactly.
So I'm avoiding living a life that I think that should or is promised to bring me more enjoyment, because I'm worried about somebody I don't even know, what they may think about me.
Yeah.
So, but it's all of these things are easy to say, even when you have a microphone sitting in front of you. They're much easier to say than I thought they would be, but easy to say, hard to do. But it's a matter of living life.
It's a process. That's one of my big problems or challenges, has been caring so much about what other people think. There's some times where I just don't care.
Yeah.
But most of the time I care. And I'm trying to work on that, and also understanding that you being on the journey that you're on, or me being on the journey that I'm on, or anybody who lives in that, I call it living in my spiritual self.
Yeah.
Although I'm very much aware of my human self.
Yeah.
I like to live in my spiritual self. That's what I strive for, to stay connected to God as much as I can. In that place, people will think you're weird.
Yeah.
They care about the material things of this world. They care about getting the job done, and getting the job done a certain way. If I bring different sensibilities to my job, I'm going to be seen as a little odd.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I've just started accepting that. And I can see it. I can see the change in me, because I can feel my own strength.
Yeah.
I feel my own conviction, and I feel a sense of, I don't care. It's what it is.
Yeah. I am getting there, and I'm further along there than I was a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
You try and please the world, and you'll never please them. As far as that go, if you're trying to please the world instead of finding some peace within yourself, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Because no, you can't please them. When you see, and this is so passé that it happens all the time, but when you see people that have what you think that you want, or the desire of an earthly desire, somebody's now they're famous, they're a famous actor, and they're doing great, and you hear about them doing great, and you think everything's great, and they just have, they're dating this person, they're doing that. You're hearing all this stuff that's going on, and then you hear, well, they tried to commit suicide.
Yeah.
And you're like, what kind of pain was this person going through? And it never, they're putting up a front all the time.
Yeah.
They're living this life to try. And then, or then like Mike Tyson says, the happiest I ever was when I was locked up in prison.
Yeah.
And he said, all this money, all it brought was problems. So how many lessons do you have to see that it's not about this? It's about something else. It's about something deeper. And, it's easy to not ask those questions. Just live your life based on day to day, and I get up and you do the same thing and you follow your routine. But if you're not asking those questions and trying to get those answers, at least for yourself, and you're going to wind up in a spot that you're not going to like down the road, and then you're going to be faced with, well, now I want to answer these questions, and I hope I have enough time to at least start down the path and start becoming the person that I want to be, or the person that God wants me to be, or to live the life that they see for me, you know?
Yeah.
So that it's like you said, it's not easy. It's not that, but I think, it's well worth doing, so.
Ron, thank you.
Thank you.
This means a lot to me. I really appreciate your trust.
Yeah.
And just being willing to do this.
Well, you got me started talking, and then once I start talking, maybe I just like the sound of my voice so much it's hard for me to shut up. So. But yeah, I'm glad I came over. I'm glad we got to do this. And as much as I resisted along the way and everything else, I'm glad we actually had to have this conversation.
Too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Remember, you can listen to all of our episodes on traditional podcast platforms. Please subscribe to the podcast and let me know what you thought of this episode. You can reach me on social media or through email at letstarthealingpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, let's start healing.